Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, where today you are going to learn the only legal way to get around having health insurance. That's right, no one on this show, neither myself, Joey, or Russ, as well as anyone in our office, actually has real health insurance. You see, we take part in something else, something much more cost efficient in the new economy. We're uncovering that now. Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, your guide to understanding how to get out of the Wall Street rat race and start your own mailbox money lifestyle. Now, don't let the handsome Southern draws fool you. These financial minds are teaching our country to enhance savings, increase cash flow, and create passive income, all without the help of Wall Street. Are you ready to break through? Here are your hosts, Russ Morgan, Joey Murray, and Will DeShazo. Wealth Without Wall Street, you're in for a treat today because we're about to uncover some of the secret tips and really the one tool that allows us to get around the Wall Street mandate, that is health insurance.
The Unaffordable Health Care Act, right?
The Unaffordable Health Care Act. I'm sitting here with the idea guy, Russ Morgan, and that is now what you're officially going by. And I love that because we had an open house here that was almost a year ago.
Almost a year ago.
At our office space here. And someone so beautifully and eloquently drew the idea guy on your glass. And I think it fits you perfectly.
Well, I tend to come up with ideas. I need somebody like you two to help follow through on those ideas. But I love ideas. Thank you.
So speaking of the second person in the room, we've got Joey, the Italian stallion Murray.
Hello. How are you?
Well,
We just got out of a workout class, by the way. It is a Monday. It's rare that we record our podcast show on a Monday, but Joey's working on Mondays and Wednesdays.
Hey, I went without all you guys, and I will tell you, I was excited. There was actually two other guys in the class with me, so I wasn't the only dude in the class, which has happened. It has happened, and it is a little bit demoralizing.
And for everybody listening that doesn't get a chance to see him, he got his fresh cut.
Yeah.
I mean, man.
It was time.
Earlier, you said something that really kind of got under the skin of the stallion about a new mandate that's passed. We're here in Birmingham, Alabama. Those of you that don't know, we do ride in cars and automobiles. We do not have horses taking us everywhere. And now within our automobiles, which I'm sure that this is a law in a lot of other places.
Yeah. We've gone hands-free.
You're hands-free. And that means that you don't drive the car drives itself.
Which is actually an idea all of itself. The Tesla will take over the world, and ultimately health insurance or car insurance in that regard will end up going up for everybody who's not hands-free. But yes, we no longer can hold our cell phones in the car at any point in time unless you are parked. So no more like checking Facebook, updating Twitter, whatever you're doing. No more
updating Twitter.
Yeah, any more of that stuff, which is so funny because I don't have a Twitter account, but I'm trying to be in the
I
know.
think everybody else knows that after that comment, Russ.
So Joey, how do you feel about that? Why does that upset you? Because you're the guy in the Avalon that's at the red light.
Surely your Avi is Bluetooth compatible, bro.
Here's the one thing I got going for me. Okay, it is going to be rare that a cop is going to look in an Avalon to catch anybody on a cell phone. Okay. That generation does not have a cell phone.
I'm just calling in my prescription medicine.
Yeah.
I'm flying under the radar.
You're going to be like, look, I'm trying to find the old person who lost his car.
Sir, did you steal this Avalon?
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of frustrating to me, but my daughter, who's 12, asked me this question the other day. Daddy, do you think this is going to make us safer? And I always think back to all the different laws and adjustments that have been made over time in an effort to make things better. I mean, you think about the war on poverty, right? That was started back in the 70s. Now we're ever more, homeless population, the unemployment, all of that stuff has skyrocketed. The idea of, the post office. The post office is the worst example that you can possibly have of the government trying to solve a problem and making it worse. I mean, nobody depends on the USPS anymore. We've got all of these issues, and I could go on and on and on. Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and now we've got hands-free devices as if that's going to truly make us safer. I would just say, how about we teach people how to drive first, right? Because I think most of the problems is that we've got a group of people who've never been taught how to drive, And now they're adding a distraction, which I do agree that cell phones are a distraction and will increase accidents, but that's not the problem. The problem is people don't know how to drive. I mean, I learned how to eat, drive, drink, water, all these things all at
Soda.
one time. I mean, like, seriously. I mean,
well, but Russ, you are the metaphorical guy here, right? And this sounds oddly similar to a very similar story that the government is now placing in this Unaffordable Health Care Act, right? Because everybody needs to be mandated to have health insurance. Do you?
no, I don't have health insurance.
Do you, Joey?
No.
Do I?
No.
No, I don't.
Do you have to ask yourself that? Like,
Well, I was.
Well,
Audibly?
Will's trying to play host here, so
okay,
whenever he
I'm
like,
sorry.
he
I'm
has to
sorry.
be like,
we should have asked you.
That would have been polite of me. Thank you. But no, I am a single individual, right? I'm 26 years old. I am not getting my health insurance paid by some large multi-million-dollar company. If I were to be on an ACA, an Affordable Care Act health insurance plan, I want something that is just straight up. Look, I hardly go to the doctor, right? I go a couple times a year. I need a catastrophic plan. I need something cheap, low cost, so that I can put cash elsewhere.
That's a noble idea.
I can no longer do that. So I was resorted, and thankfully Russ has been a part of a health sharing, which we're going to touch on in just a second, a part of a health sharing plan for several years now, and led me to that idea. Also, I
Me
think
as well.
Led
That's
Joey
right.
to that idea.
the idea guy.
There you go.
There you go.
The idea guy and the implementer.
It's going to stick. It's going to stick.
So let's go into what the whole idea of health sharing, because there's just a pool out there of people, and most people don't understand how health insurance works. So to first understand why this isn't going to work, this Affordable Care Act, let's talk about health insurance and how it operates, how it works.
Well, I mean, really, Will, if you think about health insurance, it's nothing more than prepaid medical. That's all it is. It is simply that you're paying your medical cost in advance. The difference is that you're paying it for the pool of people that you're associating with. So whenever you go into Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is the monster in Alabama, and it's pretty big nationwide, basically everybody who's a part of that health insurance pool, they're assuming what are going to be the cost of this group of people, and you just start paying it monthly. Well, you mentioned a second ago being a 26-year-old individual going to the doctor maybe twice a year. I would doubt it's even that much. And when you go, it's really probably to get like a shot for a sinus infection.
Russ, the last
or
time I went
whatever.
to the doctor was when I had poison ivy and I had to get a steroid shot.
Yeah.
It's like $130.
Yeah, we're talking nothing
Yeah.
comparatively to what everybody else is doing. So you're contributing. You know, if you're in that Blue Cross Blue Shield plan, you would probably be contributing $400 to $500 a month minimum as a single individual at your age bracket, $5,000 a year, and like you said, you use $200 worth. Well, that is.
5,000 for the deductible is what you're talking about.
Well, yeah. Well, no, I'm
Well,
just
and
saying his
out-of-pocket
premium,
costs,
his
yeah.
out of pocket cost is going
Yeah.
to be $5,000,
Close to
and
that.
he probably used $200 worth of expense. That
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
even get probably maybe $200 or maybe $20 of that got actually paid for by
Exactly.
by the system.
Exactly.
Well, you're not paying for yourself; you're paying for the other's cost. When we think about stuff, to me, it's like the three of us go out to eat. I may say, "Hey, I'll pick up the tab today," because I know the next time we go out, one of the two of you are going to pick up. Now, that's why I'm going to say, "Let's go to Arby's today," and then the next time when we're actually out at like a true restaurant,
You mind
yeah,
taking us to Perry's?
if it
Will?
doesn't have a drive-through,
You
then I'm
owe
going to be
me.
like, "Hey, you remember last time I paid, right?" But see, that's the way. Whenever the three of us go out and one of us picks it up, then the next time, that's not the way health insurance works. Though we're all not actually contributing at the same rate or receiving the same stuff. Some people are receiving the Perry steak dinner, another person's getting, those like chili pot poppers or whatever,
The bonus fry.
the bonus fry. If that, maybe like you're like licking the paper that touched the bonus fry.
Exactly.
You're not getting that. And that's health insurance has become ever more expensive. One, because of the pool of people who are in it. People believe that there's a right to health insurance. No, there's the opportunity to purchase it. And for everyone who wants it, knock yourself out and get it. But I, as an individual, do not want to participate with people who live a much different lifestyle than I do. You guys know me. I mean, I don't drink. I don't smoke. I try to eat very healthy. I avoid doctors unless they're in my family. I don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm going to pay for outrageous expenses for things that I personally wouldn't participate in. And that's what health sharing, as we get into it in a second, allows me to do. And it allowed me to cut my family's health insurance by 4 or 5 times.
Well, and let's keep in mind, Joey, how many kids do you have?
I have 4 kids. Russ has 4 kids.
Russ has 4 kids. Jonathan, who's in our office, has a 2.5-year-old, right?
Yeah.
This is not just for the single folks in their 20s and early 30s. Health sharing is a super viable option for people who have children or want to have children.
Right. That's right.
That's a very daunting thought, not to have health insurance and have a child.
We haven't, I think, addressed this yet. What is health sharing?
Yeah. So health sharing is, if you think about it, it's almost the same concept of health insurance in terms of you're in a pool, right, of other people. But the difference is that pool has been
Much
shrunk.
cleaner.
It's shrunk down because
It's not like my pool right now at home. It's green.
So that pool has agreed to live by certain standards, right? The lifestyle that they are living has got to match up, or their health
Give
needs.
some examples. Let's get very specific.
So typically these are faith-based, right? There's companies that are not faith-based, but there are companies that are. So no smoking, drinking in moderation, and the pre-existing conditions. They're limiting those
I'm going to stop you right
in
here.
this pool.
By the way, I've read the Bible several times, and there's areas that I completely forget. I don't remember, though, in the Bible where it said you can't smoke.
I don't know that that's part of this discussion. It's more about the health consequences that are associated with it.
Okay, well, you just said
Right.
face-bathed, no smoking. I just wanted to, just addressing that.
Oh,
issue.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, those things are not necessarily tied together. It's just that's one of the agreements that you're making with
Okay.
these groups, right?
Well, I was just testing you. I didn't know. Like, how actually, if somebody
I
asked
actually
me
don't
that
know the answer
question,
to that either.
It's
Except
just
for-
simply there are so many things that have been proven health-wise.
if you guys could see Joey right now, he's sweating. Like Joey is literally sweating right now.
And by the way,
It's
for
from the
those of you-
workout, okay?
and people need to know that are listening, we don't sell health insurance. We sure don't sell health sharing.
That's right.
We're not in the business to make money off of health sharing. This is not an endorsed advertisement. This is not an affiliate promotion. We just know that it works. And we want to share this knowledge with you.
Well, I'm sorry. I interrupted you a second ago, but it was a question that made me think about.
So by limiting the pool that you're involved with, the obvious result is there's going to be much, much less cost associated with those medical costs. And so sharing those bills is a lot cheaper. So what happens is every month you have a share amount, and it's very dependent on the size of your household, right? So in my household, it's $495 a month. That $495 is about $1,000 less than what it would have been at Blue Cross Blue Shield, by the way. Similar to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that $1,000 a month, I can set aside and save consistently every single month in preparation for those costs that I would have to then pay out of pocket. So that's the other part of this, right?
Let's break that down even further. Just on a very simple level, health sharing is nothing more than the group that we're part of is Samaritan Ministries, and there's Christian Healthcare Ministries, which you're part of, Will.
Right.
There's Liberty. There's Medishare. There's all sort of different ones. And these things have been around for 20, 30 years now. These aren't brand new. People think,
Right.
that, oh, this is something, don't talk about it because this is going to go viral and the Congress is going to shut it down. This is something that's been around for a long time. And not to mention, it's something that's filling a gap that the government isn't. So I really don't believe that if we get this out wide, that this is going to be something the government's going to attack. I think we need to have a groundswelling. We need to get the people demanding it. But more importantly, we need to get the physicians. If you're a physician listening to this, please get on the cash train. Like, start accepting cash patients. Start promoting cash. It's very good for your business, by the way. It eliminates the need to have to file claims and go through the rigmarole that it is the accounting nightmare in medical offices. I can speak to that because my wife's a dentist. My brother-in-law is a orthopedic surgeon. We talk about this constantly. But the general gist of this is you have in Samaritan, we've got 60,000 families that have joined this. So we have a large group of people who are agreeing to share the expenses. And that pool of people live in this specific lifestyle. They just take what are the expenses of this group every single year, and they divide that by the different groupings, whether your family of more than two, if you are a single individual or you're just married, it doesn't matter the age. And then that's how it gets distributed. So as you said, our share price is $495 a month, which, by the way, has been less than that several times this year, because anytime the experience of the company of Samaritan, they actually receive less expenses for that month than they receive shares or what the current share rate would be. then
They lower it.
they lower it and they tell you, hey, by the way, your share cost is 5% lower, 6% lower this month, which I think is pretty awesome.
I've never had my insurance, when I did have health insurance, come back and say, hey, your premium has dropped.
Yeah.
Month,
Never,
actually. I
right.
think Birmingham was like, 73% higher from 2016
Year over year.
2016 year over year. Yeah.
Well,
That's
and that's
right.
the reason we're talking about it, because you're probably experiencing 100, 200% in some areas.
Yeah.
And it goes back to, this is something that, is not typical, but it's been going on for a long time, and very successful people are using this to basically take care of their health needs, share expenses with other people, because it is prepaid medical, but I want to prepay my medical with people who are agreeing to live a healthier lifestyle. That means they're not going to take illicit drugs. They're not going to have sex out of marriage, or whatever those limits that the group puts on you. And so the issues that deal with all of those things are at least eliminated. Doesn't mean that we don't have people in our family who have health issues. I mean, my father-in-law has had eye surgery. My nephew has had an eye issue himself. And my sister-in-law, they've had 3 kids on this health sharing. I mean, the costs are still there, but they're just more in line with not all of these things that could be avoided.
Well, let me give a real life example. Just last month, my 3-year-old, now 4, she had a tonsillectomy. It was recommended by the doctor. She kept having issues getting sinus infections, and she also was having some trouble with breathing at night and stuff. And so they said, hey, we need a tonsillectomy. So that thing, I mean, we had to pay $2,000 out of pocket to pay for it in advance. And now what I'm in the process of doing is uploading those bills to the sharing site here with Samaritan. And I will, over the course of the next 60 days, receive all of that money back, because we actually negotiated the bills down so low that Samaritan is willing to share the entire cost.
So let's go into that. We talked about how you join together. Basically, you're joining a group. And if you've ever been a member of like Sam's Club, right? I mean, that's you're a member of Sam's Club. You're joining that group for the ability to have reduced cost on your purchasing goods, right? Well, that's basically what these health sharing groups are. You're joining a group, you meet some minimum requirements, but then your experience is, when you have a health issue with Samaritan, we basically cover the first $300. Everything else is shared. So whenever you went to the doctor, you had to tell them that you're a cash patient, right?
That's right. And those doctor visits are what, $100, $120, something like that. So that's not something I would ever send into Samaritan. I just pay cash right there at the doctor's office. But when there's things that are over that, like for instance, this tonsillectomy, $2,000, we're paying on it as we go, the first visit, second visit, the whole thing. Then afterwards, we send all those bills in. If we've negotiated them down low enough, which you can always do that with a doctor.
Yeah, and I will say, Joey, we've got tips on how to negotiate. We've got 10 tips that actually Russ, your brother-in-law, kind of helped build a couple of these, who is an orthopedic surgeon that accepts primarily cash patients here in town, in Birmingham. We've got 10 tips to help people negotiate. I know that's a scary thing for some people. It shouldn't be.
Well, and
it's very common.
what we're finding over our course of now, we've been doing this over a year, that doctors are more than willing to give you a lower price for cash because of what you just mentioned, Russ. I mean, their headache is non-existent with a cash patient. And so they're more than willing to give you 15, 20, 30, even 50% plus off of what the normal bill would be.
The key is to make sure you're saying you're a cash paying patient, right? Doctors hate cash patients, right? Because cash patients mean no insurance to most physicians.
That's right.
And that means somebody who has no money and will not pay them. But whenever you're a cash paying patient, meaning I'm going to pay you when I show up, what is my expense going to be? All of these things, then that is what you say. We pay out of pocket for these normal everyday expenses. There's not a reason for me to have to like share my $150 visit with my neighbor. That doesn't make sense. But when the burden is too big for me to bear, because that is really what we're called to do, is we're called to bear each other's, our brother and our neighbor's burden. Well, when that burden becomes $2,000, maybe in your situation, $10,000, $50,000, my dad had a heart cath not too long ago. And, that experience of being in the hospital and all that stuff, I mean, it was probably in the $100,000 range. That would be a burden too large to bear. Well, a Samaritan, actually, you can share up to $250,000 under the basic plan. And what most people always ask me, what happens with the catastrophic issue?
Right.
What happens when I have, cancer or I have a heart attack and I have to go into the hospital for, a week or 2 weeks? Most people don't realize most of those things, like I said, my father having to be in there, actually was in ICU not too long ago because of a stroke, and I haven't seen those bills yet. It'll be way less than the $250,000, even though he's in a hospital for 2 days. I mean, it'll be expensive, but it will not be that sort of cost. You'd have to be there for like 6 months. I mean, to get into some really expensive stuff, which, by the way, Samaritan and all of these other groups have some sort of plan that allows for a saving costs. And for your, what's the name of yours through Christian Healthcare Ministry?
I share through Christian Healthcare Ministry, and they have almost like you mentioned, like kind of like a rider, an add-on, right? It's called Brothers Keeper. And you can share, I think it's like up to $1 million or $2 million even of cost. And you pay that quarterly. And I want to say I've never paid, and that fluctuates, but I've never paid over $24, $25 a quarter for that. I think this past month it was $18. It was an $18 add-on to my $85 a month.
Yeah. How cool is that?
It's crazy.
And with Samaritan, it's like $395 a year or something. Here's the thing, though. I don't have to send it in. They just tell me to save it. And then I think maybe like once or twice a year, they actually will add it on my bill and my statement that says, here, send this to so-and-so. And they had an expense that was over and above. Please share, an extra $25 or whatever it is. And I found out through listening to a Samaritan board member the other day, he was talking about how little they've had to share using that Save to Share program. They have over $17 million that has been agreed to share in that cost that has not been shared yet.
Wow.
So they have a huge backlog of opportunity if something happens. I mean, the reality is most things don't go over the 250. And that's where everybody's so nervous. And, these major medical plans try to come out and say, oh, what happens if this happens?
The fear, the hesitancy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And here's the key. At the end of the day, if that happens anyway, most plans aren't going to cover it. They're going to have some sort of lifetime limit or whatever it is.
That's right.
And who better to be bearing that burden than your fellow neighbor in a plan that's already agreeing to do it?
Well, and look, this is something that is so against the grain, right? Not everyone is pushing this. A lot of people are fearful of this, but really and truly, and I remember when I decided to begin sharing, I was talking to my mom on the phone about the idea because she's in kind of a very similar position. And she's just thought that is the most risky, just scary thought you could ever do, right? She's 65, I guess. She's very traditional in thinking, very traditional in action, just like many of our parents are. But the truths are that agenda has just been pushed and pushed and pushed on us to where we think you have to go down this one path that everyone else in our country is going down. You've got to follow them to do things the right way. And if you don't, then things will end up awry, right? Yeah. That's not true. That's so not true. There are how many thousands of families did you mention? 60,000 people within Samaritan. And Samaritan, if I'm not mistaken, is not the largest
I don't think they're the largest
provider. They're up there, but they're not the largest provider. So this isn't something that no one is doing. Like you mentioned, it's not that it's not proven. It's just that people are hesitant because it's not pushed on the agenda.
Well, it doesn't take a whole lot for this to be put together other than a group of people agreeing to do the following. I mean, it literally, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Humana, United, all they are, they're just a big pool of people that are collecting money. Now, a lot of that money is now being subsidized through our tax dollars, which, by the way, makes me want to share this bigger and wider so that our tax burden, if we get more people doing this, then our tax burden actually could be reduced in theory, assuming the government then wouldn't take that money and put it somewhere else. But the key is for us is that we've got to figure out ways to take extra dollars, and cash flow is always a concern for us. We've got to manage cash flow better. We talk about taxes all the time. We talk about retirement plans. In the future, we're going to talk about mortgages, but health insurance is a huge cash flow issue. And if we don't find better ways to do this, it's only going to get more expensive. We see that in retirement. We see our clients who are retiring and who they're burdened with their health costs and prescriptions and things like that. That's a big one there too. I want to touch on that. Let's talk about prescription drugs as it relates to health sharing, because most people are like used to having this little card and they want to know, how does that work if I'm a cash patient? Am I not going to end up paying, like 10
Exorbitant
times
amounts, yeah.
what it would be?
Yeah. So I'm grateful for your brother-in-law for sharing with me GoodRx. It's a app that you can go on and search any of the drugs that you regularly get, and they will tell you the locations around you where you can get the lowest cost for those cash prescriptions. So when I made the transition, most people don't know this about me, but I have a pretty serious health issue that I already know is not going to be covered under some of these pre-existing conditions, by the way. But I also know that I had to really consider this prescription medication I'm on. At the time when I was on insurance, it was $300 something a month. That was under insurance. And
You were paying for it, or
I was paying that with the
yeah,
insurance.
you had insurance?
So until I hit a deductible, which was never,
Yeah.
and then
On
it would
top of the whatever $1,000 that you're paying for the premium.
exactly. So when I made the transition to this and started looking that up on GoodRx, I actually pay $80 a month now because I pay directly cash. Is that not ridiculous to y'all? I mean,
The system's so convoluted.
I buy a 90-day supply now for less than I did 1 month while I was on insurance.
Which, by the way, you don't have to be using health sharing in order to take advantage of GoodRx. So if
That's
you're
true.
buying medication, go to goodrx.com. What a great way. And the bigger the people that are using that, the more demand we can create, and we can ultimately drive down the price through that. That's a wonderful thing. And most people don't understand. That's like with Samaritan, if we have a claim, the drugs that go along with, for instance, the anesthesia and any sort of follow-up drugs your daughter had to have, that was a part of that whole share, and they do it for the first 4 months. But then any long-term drugs that you're taking for any illnesses and stuff,
Right.
then that's not a non-shareable thing. But through things like GoodRx, you're able to really reduce those costs a ton.
Right. The big thing that we run into every day, Russ, is this is a huge burden for especially self-employed folks that we're helping, contractors, realtors, builders, dentists. I mean, you name it. Anybody that's running their own business, they are getting crushed under these huge premiums and deductibles. And so by sharing this with as many people as we can, I'm hoping that we're opening people's eyes to an alternative. That's what this whole podcast is about, is alternatives. We've talked about to Wall Street, but this is kind of related, right? It's an alternative to a burdensome cost. It's almost like a tax. You
Yeah.
think about it, right?
It is a
I mean, if you compare your dollars from 10 years ago to what they are today, you've had to allocate so much more to medical expense or the cost to have insurance. Really, the premiums and the deductibles are so outrageous comparatively that it's really cutting down how much you have left over.
Well, and let's talk, speaking of the tax, a lot of people are going to say, but you have to have health insurance. According to
Good
the
point.
Affordable Care Act, I, as a citizen of the United States of America, am forced to have health insurance, or else I'll pay a fee or a penalty, right?
penalty.
Now, a penalty, is that true? Will you have to pay a penalty? It depends on who you are, correct? So that penalty is only held back from a tax refund, correct? That's my understanding.
Yeah, the way it works is the enforcement of it is not like they don't come after you. They're not going to seize assets that you have, and like they would if you had back taxes or something. The only way they can enforce this is that they actually can withhold any refund, right? And that's laughable. If you're an entrepreneur, business owner, like there's no such thing. That word left us, a long time ago, refund. And by the way, even if you're not an entrepreneur, business owner, and you're receiving a refund, go back and figure out a way to not get a refund, because all that means is that you're giving them too much money every year. Get it to a point where you actually pay them every single time, no matter what, pay them, because that means you gave them money at the last possible second. You got to keep it for as long as possible. We had that conversation when you were still working in a company and you were getting such a large refund.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, to the tune of $25,000 a year that I was like,
really?
well, what else can I do? I mean, I didn't know.
Now that's owned. You're like, what? Wait, what?
Well, I mean, the thing is, though, I met him and he was giving so much money away. He and his wife are so charitable, and they just had so many deductions because of this that he was receiving this refund. And they looked at it as almost like this huge windfall every year. And there's so many people out there that do receive refunds, and they go, "This is our vacation money that comes in every June." It's kind of like, well, you can still go on a vacation in June, but why don't you have the money throughout the year?
Right.
I mean, why don't you go on a vacation in November too? You don't have to wait till June.
I hear it's nice in the British Virgin Islands that time of year.
I don't know, but all I'm saying is that the idea of us having a tax or whatever, and every one of these health sharing plans are actually exempt, by the way.
That's
Right.
right.
That's a big key, is that because you're participating in health sharing, there's actually a form that you will fill out that actually shows you're an exempt member from that Affordable Health
And
Care
it's
Act.
not some kind of crazy detailed form. It's literally like a box and maybe a
Yeah.
couple of other things.
Yeah, it's
And
really
so
really
simple.
easy. So it's not like we're gambling on this thing, hoping that they don't come back after us. We're following the rules. And as you said, I mean, this year alone, I've had 4 out of the 7 months here in 2017 that my share costs have actually been reduced because we had less expenses than we had possible shares coming in the door. That's awesome. My family gets to spend that extra money. I write a check for what it is. And the way it works for us, you mentioned pre-existing, because that's one of the questions people ask. Well, how do I participate in it? You have to be a member. You have to qualify under certain things. But can I be a member of this if I have a health issue? And the answer is yes. If you've received treatment over the past 12 months, that's the pre-existing cause within Samaritan. I don't know what it is within Christian Healthcare Ministries.
Yeah, they all differ.
But within Samaritans, if you've had treatment on any illness over the last 12 months, or you are currently pregnant, then it is pre-existing. But there's actually some help within that too in there.
That's right. I mean, each one of these communities typically has almost like a forum. I don't know how to really communicate it, but to the point where you can still say, hey, I know this isn't a coverable expense, but if anybody in the community is feeling charitable, would you please publish this, so to speak, for others to see? And I haven't personally experienced it, but we've heard over and over how those things are shared 100%.
Right.
It's
The
crazy.
stories are told, and if you're giving to that, then that's considered as a charitable donation.
It
correct?
can be, yeah. If you actually give it through Samaritan,
and
or we
above.
can send a check directly to the individual, and then we wouldn't be able to write it off as a charitable donation. But yes, my wife and I have participated in that, because they actually highlight one specific person on our monthly newsletter that we get. And, they tell you what their illness is. They let you know it was an unpublishable event because of it being a pre-existing condition, or maybe it's a dental thing that's not covered through the sharing. But if you so choose to share, they don't tell you an amount. You could just write a check for $20. You write a check for $2,000, and you can just send it to that individual. And yeah, we've heard of how many of these already non-publishable events are being cared for. How many times has an insurance company ever contacted somebody on your behalf and said, hey, by the way, they don't have coverage for this? Would you mind, sending them a check?
Chipping in a few bucks here. Yeah, not going to happen. Another thing, I don't think we really mentioned this, but I don't want to neglect, is how valuable it is to be able to choose the doctor that you want to work with. I mean, I can remember over and over when I was in the corporate world we had a change in insurance. And
In-network,
what's the first thing you have to do? Talk to my wife. Hey, is your doctor? Let's call and see if they're in the network. Let's look it up and see if the doctor we use every day, every time isn't. There's none of that.
And that's huge too. Let's
I
talk
mean-
about that for pregnancies, from what I've heard almost every man discuss, and how their wife has got to be comfortable with that person. You don't want to be tied to the man or woman who's delivering your child just because they're in your network.
Well,
Right.
we made that. I can tell you firsthand, our first 2 children were born at a certain hospital. And it was because my wife's sister had used the same OB. And so she had started talking to him, and she came familiar. And then we actually left that health insurance company that we were with at the time. And we were actually, this was before I even knew about health sharing. And we were in the process of switching, because we're trying to play that game. It's just like switching, internet service or cable service, where you're trying to figure out which one's the cheapest at that time. And we were switching health insurance companies, and we ended up finding out we were pregnant. Hallelujah. But oops. Now we're not covered.
We don't have coverage.
We weren't covered. So we were actually paying cash for this baby, and we're not going to be reimbursed by anybody. And her doctor was going to be like $15,000 to be at this one place versus like $9,000 to be at this other hospital. And she was like, oh man, what do we do? And at the time, she was just out of dental school, and still the burden of everything was a little heavy, and we ended up changing, and she didn't like it at first. I think afterwards she was glad. She really started relating to her new OB. But yeah, it's that decision. You're having to make a financial decision for things like that is really tough. And when you get to choose your own doctor, that's huge.
It goes back to control. There is no control in the traditional Wall Street mindset at all. You have got nearly all the control in the world. You can control what you pay at the doctor in some regard, right? With negotiation, you control a set price. You know that price is there. You control who you want to help and how much you want to help them. The price on pharmaceuticals. I mean, the control is finally shifted back into the people. But that's the last thing that the Wall Street agenda wants.
Right.
And that's why this is so just under the rug.
But it's so awesome. But the key is that just getting over the fear. I mean, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law were doing this for 2 years, and we were watching them before I did it, before I was willing to step out there, because it was just like, well, man, I had the traditional insurance. It wasn't that expensive at the time, because I actually had it being subsidized by another company. And it was one of those things where it's like, oh, well, it's not a burden yet. But the idea is that health insurance is getting more expensive every single day. The number of providers who are accepting your health insurance plan is getting smaller every day. For me, there's not a better time to start looking at this than now. And like you said, Will, this is not something we get paid to do, but it is important for us, I think, to make sure that the cost of doing this is very minimal, other than you're going to have to call the doctor's office and let them know that you're a cash patient. You're probably going to have to wait for them to figure out what that even cost is, because most doctors have no clue.
They do not.
And their staff sure doesn't.
They have no clue what a cost is. So you're going to have to negotiate through that a little bit. Whenever you do have a claim, hopefully you have very few, but when you do, there's some forms to fill out the first time you go through it. It's probably going to take you a little extra time. But at the end of the day, I mean, it is so awesome to know that I'm sharing the burden for someone else. And the check that I wrote one today. It was $515 or whatever it is, because it did have some of the Save to Share stuff in it. I mean, how cool. Like I actually knew that person, what their issue was, and I sent them a little note of encouragement with it. That to me is so much better than the just hardcore, just shooting it off and sending it to the corporate world, and knowing that, hey, when I go to the doctor, by the way, I don't know, I have no idea how much is going to be covered by the health insurance company. How much of, are they going to charge me? That's never the case. I know within health sharing that I'm going to end up paying it, and I'm going to be reimbursed up to every dollar, maybe $300 less.
Right.
So Joey, if you could input one, and I think that was Russ's one thing that makes him feel this is worth it. This is why I did this. To those out there who are your age, which is
mid-30s, let's say.
Mid-30s, you're married, you've got 4 kids.
I'm still holding on to the mid.
4 kids between the ages of
11 and 2.
So what would make that man of a family or that woman of a family say, I should do this?
I would say that my initial draw to it was very much a financial decision, because I could not bear the fact of sending $1,000 extra to Blue Cross Blue Shield to then turn around and have to pay $10,000. My deductible under that plan was $10,000. So I was paying an extra $1,000 a month for the right to pay all my medical bills anyway. I mean, that was the first thing.
You're going to have $22,000 in expenses in order.
And that's a game you're never going to win.
No.
Yeah. And so, I mean, just point blank, baseline, what can $12,000 at least a year grow to over my lifetime? It is unfathomable. I mean, it's a huge lost opportunity that we're giving up to the Blue Cross Blue Shield, the Uniteds, whoever it might be. But since then, my experience has been so positive. Having other people send us notes of encouragement. I've been on the receiving end of that now probably 3 times in just over a year.
Wow.
So we've had expenses, we've had to have them shared, and that experience has been flawless, easy, the whole deal. So for those who are listening, I'm hoping this is encouraging. I'm hoping that it is continuously whetting your appetite for something that is alternative to the way everybody else is doing everything. And not that it's this new age thing, but it's just outside the box. It's something that's always been there. You maybe just didn't know about it. And we want to continuously feed our listeners with alternatives that are going to make your life better financially. I mean, in this case, it's emotionally, physically, all those things included.
Well, and again, the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast is just one launching point. We're here to teach you as much as we can through your headphones, through your car speakers, through your Bluetooth speaker, however you're listening to this show. However, we do a lot more than just host this podcast. We work pretty hard to educate you as much as possible in as many ways as possible. We have got a webinar series that's pre-recorded. We did record it live. This was about 6 months ago today. We did record it live. We had a whole bunch of people on there. We taught tons of people, had some really, really, really great feedback. It's a 3-part series. If I remember correctly, Russ, we intro the subject matter a little bit. We compare some companies in there. We even have a Q&A with a representative of one of the companies who I believe was on the board at one point of that company, as well as your brother-in-law, who is a cash accepting physician. So there are all sorts of ways to learn about this, and we're your provider. Check out the show notes below this. You're going to learn everything you need to know about where to go to get access to that webinar. It's free, by the way. That's pretty strong that we spent how many hours?
Yeah.
Too many hours.
A lot.
Doing that for you. But really and truly, this show is about building a lifestyle and building wealth without Wall Street. And that's why we're here bringing it to you today. So any final thoughts for us, Joey?
I'm just thankful that we get to share such a great idea, and don't be afraid to look up on the show notes, the different companies, and reach out to us with a comment, a question.
Yeah. Thank you guys for listening.
Awesome. We'll tune in next week. This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your terms in places you understand so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.